Hey everybody, this is Hercules Penix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Hercules Penix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at The Shadow, number 1 through 4, and number 6. These are the 5 issues that Mike Kaluta drew of this great 1973 comic. These issues span 1973 to 1974, and this is the first time DC got the rights to do The Shadow, and they did it up right. These are some great early 70s comics. Some of probably the best comics of the 70s, if you had to make a short list. This is some wonderful stuff, especially due to Kaluta. Kaluta was pretty new around this time, and this kind of made his name in comics. So let's crack these open. These are beautiful. So we have number 1 here. God, what an iconic cover. That is so good. And Mike Kaluta, in the first few issues, the colorist, did like color holds, which my friend who worked for Marvel Comics, he told me that cost a little bit more money to do this little fancy bit of stuff. And it says on the Grand Comic Database that Jack Atler colored this. He was like the long-term production guy at DC. So maybe he did it because he was the only one who knew how to do that shit. Because it was too expensive to do normally. Of course, the cover is by Michael Kaluta. Just beautiful. The color, everything. This is just a poster. I wonder if they ever made posters of that. They should have. So here we have a little introduction page. All of these are written by Denny O'Neil, well, most of them, and drawn by Michael Kaluta. The issues I have. The other issues I never bought. I don't care. If Mike Kaluta's not drawing The Shadow, I really don't care. So if you know The Shadow, he's like the sui generis of like all the gritty vigilantes, pre-Batman, all those 80s gritty guys, vigilantes who kill in the name of justice and vengeance. And he's got this group of agents who help him all the time, which we will soon see. This first issue is called The Doom Puzzle. And already we can see beautiful Michael Kaluta illustration. Just savoring everything he draws in this. Just a warehouse or... he's really going to town. And we see these criminals. One of them is trying to buy info from the other one. And all of a sudden we hear the Shadow's trademark laugh. And the Shadow pops out of the shadows. And he kills one of the guys. Well, he kills both of them eventually. And he grabs the little scrap of note paper that has the information. The colors in all of these are by Jerry Serp, long-term DC colorist, and they're pretty beautiful. Also helped by the fact that in this time in the 70s in DC, they hadn't gone to those shitty plastic presses yet. So there's some really solid colors and coloring in here. So we meet his buddy here. He's his taxi cab driver, Shrevy, and he's basically his transport. This is Margot Lane, his girlfriend, Gal Friday. She goes undercover a lot when he needs a woman agent. So he gets this notepaper, and it's kind of in this weird code. And it does that little thing where the editor even says, "Have you cracked the code? If not, see the page entitled The Shadow Knows Following This Adventure." I gotta be honest, when I saw their explanation, I was like, nobody in the world would have figured that out. It's stupid. So the Shadow he changes into his alter ego, Lamont Cranston, dandy about town, very, Bruce Wayne-ish. And he can walk amongst the highest stratas of society. He knows everybody. So they go to the Swank Club. Shadow calls up another one of his operatives, Burbank. Burbank is like his communications master. He pretty much just stays in this headquarters, and he calls up everyone and gets them ready. He is like Shadow's personal assistant. And we see another one, Harry Vincent. Harry Vincent's a very playboy type. Every time we see him, he's with a different girlfriend, and they all seem to adore him. And they're always like, why do you have to run off, Harry? Come on. But these guys are super loyal to the Shadow. These guys will follow him to the ends of the earth. So the Shadow tells Harry to go to this certain corner. A police truck is transporting some criminals. All of a sudden, gunshots fire. These thugs shoot the tires out. The truck crashes. Harry Vincent tries to save the day, but he's outnumbered. And this guy clunks him in the head. They free the criminals and then put Harry Vincent in there as their captive. So now we're back with Cranston and Margot. Shrevey, the taxi cab driver, runs up and he says, hey, I was keeping an eye on Harry. And he tells him what happened. He saw the whole thing. Like I said, look at these solid colors. This beautiful art. Now we see Harry tied up, getting brutalized by these two thugs. And then we hear that chilling laugh again. And, of course, it's the Shadow. He beats the crap out of those guys, frees Harry. But he takes one of them to his headquarters. And he kind of hypnotizes him and shows him this ring. He calls it my Girasol. I never heard that term. I guess it's a hypnotizing ring. And he gets all the information from this guy. I love this series of horizontal panels. Just the blue and then the flash of red for his scarf. And we're zooming in, kind of. Really nice storytelling. If you've noticed, you might have noticed that, like, wow, there's no ads in this comic. And that's just because I ripped them out. Certain DC comics from the early 70s, as I've said before, the ads are all in the same signature. So you can just cleanly rip them out and have an adless comic. So Lamont Cranston goes to his local bank to get some scuttlebutt from this banker guy he's known for years. And this guy tells him that some old money is going to be shipped to Washington to destroy. I guess every few years, dollar bills get all crumpled and wrinkled, and they're almost useless, so they destroy them and replace them with new bills. He's like the only one who knows the route. So he's pretty cocky that they won't get, attacked. So a bunch of these thugs, that they released from that truck earlier, they're going to blow up the bridge that the truck is on. The second truck with the money, the wrinkled money. And then all of a sudden this auto gyro appears. It's an old-timey plane, it's like a helicopter plane. And, of course, the Shadow shows up. The Shadow's basically unstoppable. He's like a force of nature. And Margot was in the plane. She lands. And they succeeded in getting the shipment across the bridge. So those guys didn't blow it up in time. The truck goes across. But Shadow figured out from all the clues what their plan was. And they had a submarine. And they were going to blow up the bridge. The truck would fall into the river. And then they would, at their leisure, underwater, pick up all the money. So he knows they're down there. He wants to get the big enchilada. And he's got depth charges in his plane. And he drops them and blows up the submarine. It's not completely destroyed, though. They come to the surface. Their engines are totally busted, though. And the shadow swoops down, delivering vengeance. Yeah, I hope you're pausing at some of these pages. Every page is just so beautifully constructed. All the panels. It's just so fun to me. I love this stuff. And then I guess there is an even bigger enchilada. They gotta set up the whole thing. And Shadow, of course, figures out who it is. And it's his friend from the bank. The only one who knew the route of this old money. And the Shadow kills him. And every issue he has to say, the weeds of crime bear bitter fruit. Crime does not pay. The Shadow knows. And then he laughs a lot. Here's a little like Denny O'Neil little mini story about being abducted by the Shadow and the Shadow commanding him to write new adventures. Since the 70s needed the Shadow just as much as the 40s, 30s and 40s did, because there's so much crime and corruption. Let me get these out of the way real quick. Number 2, we can really see that like color hold. It's almost like this painterly effect, even though like other things are just drawn line art. But yeah, that was extra money. Mike Kaluta cover, of course. Mike Kaluta art. And Denny O'Neil still writing. I like when they do this in comics, or when they introduce all the cast of characters. We'll see them soon. Look at that crazy, beautiful panel. The Shadow at the carnival. So we meet this guy, Steve Kilroy. And he has a check for $1 million. He's going to pay this guy, Milton Treft. And he wants the statue, which is made from this amazing element called alumite, which is as strong as steel, but light as hell. This whole statue is like ounces. The formula is worth millions if they had it. But the guy who invented this alumite, he died before writing anything down. So this statue is the only alumite that exists in the world. But, you know, of course, some scientists could reverse engineer it and figure it out. So he's about to give him $1 million for it, this guy, Steve Kilroy. And then this guy shows up, the Harlequin. And Treft tries to play the hero. And he gets shot and killed for his troubles. Kilroy realizes he's going to have to just dive out the window to escape this guy. He's going to get shot if he doesn't. So he's got some henchmen outside. And the Shadow takes care of him. I just love the cinematic storytelling of Kaluta. Like, just different angles. Just jumping around with the camera. Really fun stuff. We'll see more examples later on. So the Shadow takes care of the flunkies, but the Harlequin escapes. Now we see his alter ego, Lamont Cranston. He's calling up Burbank again, giving everyone orders. He tells Margot to join the carnival. It's the Sorber Carnival in Titusville, which I guess is very near where all this opening action happened. She meets the owner and meets the tattooed man, Pancini, the queen of the snakes, Alhambra, Benzare, the knife thrower, who's a real sleazebag, Ajax, the wild man, Nico, the cigarette fiend. I guess that was a popular freak, just a guy who would smoke so much, people would watch him. And then the star attractions, Damon and Pythias. Pythias, the inseparable twins. And the carnival starts, and we see this montage of all the sights and sounds of a carnival. I like these little tiny panels. Gets a lot of detail in quickly. So Margot has a run-in with Ajax, the wild man. He's threatened by her. He thinks she's up to no good, so he attacks her. But then she takes off his mask. He's got a mask on. It's Kilroy. It's that guy. He joined the circus because he's pretty sure the Harlequin also joined the circus. His alter ego. And the Shadow shows up and disappears just as quickly. The Shadow likes doing that. Just taking a powder, and everyone's like, where the hell did he go? So he hears a scream. Alhambra, the snake lady's dead. And she dies before she can reveal who the killer was. But she does mention a clown suit. So it's probably the Harlequin. So they have a giant stuffed whale in this carnival for some reason. And Harlequin's there. And Shadow's about to nab him. But then Kilroy fucks up. Kilroy's a little too eager. This was a great 2-page ad. Pirates of the Caribbean. These model sets you could get. And the sword arms would move. Zap action. And Kilroy, as I was saying, trips on the ropes. The 10 comes down on the Shadow too. So the Harlequin gets away. Look at the deep, rich colors there. Pretty amazing. And so the Shadow figures out who the Harlequin really is. And he says, it's one of the twins. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're permanently joined. And he says, they're twins, but they're not joined. Watch. I like this blam. It's like double exposure. It's kind of neat. And it turns out it's a mirror, which is kind of unlikely. And all this time he's been tricking everyone. Or some of the time, he tricks people by standing next to this mirror so they see double of him. So Kilroy comes after him. Once again, he fucks up. He's in the line of fire, so Shadow can't shoot Damon or Pythias. I can't remember which one. And then he grabs Kilroy as a hostage, one of the twins. And he runs away. And the Shadow figures the only place the Harlequin could have stashed that special statue was in the whale. It's the only place big enough. So they run to the whale. Of course, the Harlequin is there, and the twin brother. And they've got Shadow in a crossfire here. And Harlequin accidentally shoots his brother, his twin. He dies and falls over. And the Shadow laughs the whole time. And then he's got Kilroy tied up, but Kilroy kicks him, giving Shadow time to start a tussle. The statue falls out of the train right over like a giant mountain pass. And the Harlequin lunges for it, unthinkingly, and falls out to his doom. This is another thing they say in every issue, the Shadow never fails. Kind of cocky. He's kind of full of himself. Okay, that's number 2. Let's get to number 3. Once again, I don't know if the color hold worked that good on this one. It's a little faded. But it's nice they tried. Mike Kaluta and Jack Adler once again doing colors. So this one's interesting because Bernie Wrightson joins Michael Kaluta on the art. And apparently in an interview, Michael Kaluta said that they both penciled and they both inked. They both kind of passed it back and forth. And the combination is superb. I mean, this is a beautifully drawn comic. It almost looks like I see more Bernie Wrightson in more panels than Mike Kaluta. Maybe he inked a little more and got to put the final finishes on it. Like that's so Wrightson. Shows that guy's face. This one's called The Kingdom of the Cobra. And we see these guys trying to rob a bank. The Shadow shows up. And look at this panel right here when the Shadow shoots this guy. He just knocks him off his feet in this amazing pose. That seems very Wrightson to me. That's just an amazing panel. As if I didn't love the Kaluta art by himself. I almost wish it was Kaluta Wrightson the whole time. This stuff is gorgeous. So Shadow's got his operatives. They're trying to find out who the leader is of this bank robbing gang. And strangely enough, the guy who was their leader, he's been in prison for like, he's serving a 20-year stretch. So he calls up the warden of the prison, and the warden says, oh yeah, Grady's here. His name's Blue Jaw Grady, is the leader. He says, yeah, Blue Jaw Grady's here. He's enjoying our hospitality. Why do you ask? And the Shadow pretends to be some reporter. He's just like, oh, I'm just checking on a story. And so then he realizes something's up at the prison. That is very Bernie Wrightson, Margot. Margot never looks like that in the other issues. He sends Margot there to pretend to be an inspector for the Women's Jail Reform Club. She dresses up as this like old spinster lady. She's gonna snoop around. So she meets the warden. It's this guy. And she says, I need to use your phone. And I need to be alone. I'm disgusted by what I've seen. She's acting like she's very offended at the conditions of the prison. Of course, she calls up Burbank. And she says, yeah, Shadow's right. This guy is no warden. He looks like a 2-bit mobster. And he hears her. And he grabs her and slaps her down. Yeah, this guy's named the Cobra, the warden. Just, I see so much Wrightson in almost every panel here. And that's a good thing. So meanwhile, in Central Park, Shadow collects Harry, his operative Harry again. And of course, Harry's making time with a woman once again. So they do this little plan where Harry pretends to be a guard, one of the fake guards, bringing a new prisoner in. I don't know why I love this hot dogging kid on his little 3-wheel random cycle. He's a little daredevil, this one. I like the chemo polar bear too. So Harry has got dynamite wired to his chest, tons of it. So he's gonna plant that. So when the other guard brings this new prisoner in, he realizes that this place is like a hotel for crooks. They got women in there, they got booze. It's this whole scam where prisoners, pay a quarter of how much they make from a job to the Cobra. He arranges equipment and transportation, and then they've got the perfect alibi. Whenever they're done, they come back to prison, and anybody wonders who did it, they're like, oh, he's in jail. So it's kind of an interesting idea. And they're introducing this new prisoner, and then the Cobra conks him on the head. He realizes that he's a ringer. He's not a real thief. They throw him into this jail cell with the real warden and the real chief guard. And they are prisoners. Here's an example of like Kaluta and Wrightson. They're just having a conversation, and they pull outside of the prison, way outside, and you can see the dilapidated graveyard across the way. Just for an excuse for them to draw some cool Gothic shit. It's amazing. They could have just drawn an easy panel of like a close-up of one of these guys talking. But, you know, that's so Wrightson and Kaluta. Those guys were young Turks at the time. They just, they were the opposite of hacks. They could have done half the amount of work on this issue, and it still would have been one of the best comics of the year. But they were just going all for broke. Just trying to put as much good illustration as they could in the deadline they had. Here, just another great angle. Bird's eye view. So, of course, the prisoner turns out to be, when it gets dark, is the Shadow. He transforms. And he breaks him out. And the Shadow attacks all these bastards. And when he gets to the Cobra's office, he's got Margot Lane tied up, and he's going to light her on fire. Poured gasoline all over her. Once again, that's so Wrightson. That face, the hair, everything, the shading. And so the Shadow agrees, he doesn't want Margot to be hurt. So they lead him to the electric chair, and they tie up the Shadow in the chair. And right then, Harry blows up the dynamite. Ka-woomp! And all the lights go out. And the Shadow escapes, as he's wont to do, and deals some swift justice to these guys. It's amazing. Panels abound in this. It's so great with the shadows of the bars. Kaluta was like a master of mood drawing. Man, I love that Shadow. So I guess some of the dynamite didn't blow up, and the Cobra is in that little room where the rest of the dynamite is, and he's gonna blow him and the Shadow up. He doesn't care. He knows the jig is up. And Harry and Margot are actually like, oh my God, the Shadow is dead. He couldn't have survived that. But of course, it's the fucking Shadow. So you hear, ha 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 ha. And he steps out. The Shadow never fails. Another great issue. Okay, what do we have here? We're up to number 4. Another great Kaluta cover. I mean, Kaluta was the master of doing covers. That's what he did for years. That's all he did. After a while, he stopped doing interiors. This is an interesting issue. Once again, I assume Kaluta ran out of time for the deadline. And he got all of his friends to help him out. So this first page is co-inked by Bernie Wrightson and Steve Hickman, who later went on to be a popular fantasy artist for paperback books. He does the first 4 pages, Steve Hickman. He inks. And, also in this issue, Denny O'Neil and Len Wein are the co-writers. So there's another little difference there. So we see this truck thundering through the night. It's got all this bootleg hooch in it. And the Shadow pops out of nowhere and shoots the truck, and it crashes. And he shows up and deals with these guys. He he basically scares this guy into telling him where it's headed, to the Bliss mission in the city. So it's weird. So this shipment of booze is being sent to one of those missions, like run by the church that tries to get guys off booze. So something's fishy. Yeah, these Stephen Hickman inks are pretty nice. They complement Kaluta well. And so now we're back to Kaluta inks. And look at this panel. If you can zoom in, just the city street, the detail he does, it's wonderful. Kaluta didn't do much of this after maybe the first 2 years. Definitely simplified his style. It was still very ornate, but this is just out of this world. This is so good. So Lamont Cranston goes to the Bliss mission. He meets this guy here. He calls himself the Ramrod of the mission. His buddies call him Devil. That's his nickname. So it doesn't look too on the up and up. Lamont Cranston pretends that he wants to donate some money to this place. And he meets the founder of the mission, Homer Bliss. Look at that, amazing. He's kind of like something out of like the Maltese Falcon or something. Like Sidney Longstreet, but with a weird, he's almost got this like new wave punky thing about going on with him. Yeah, I wonder if Kaluta started these pages and put so much detail in these that he ran out of time. Because a lot of comic artists will start the comic from just in the middle. They won't necessarily draw it for the first page. And it looks like he just went nuts on the detail in this. Oh, so these next three pages, these are Howard Chaykin inks. You can kind of see it in the face there. Young Howard Chaykin. This is a 74 now. So Lamont Cranston realizes something's going on. There's guys at this mission who are like, help us. There's an operating room. These guys with bandages. And of course, when Lamont Cranston says, I want to see that room, Devil gets all, violent on him. And he throws Shrevey into the wall. Lamont sneaks into the operating room. And he offers all the guys at the mission booze if they capture Lamont Cranston. Like, you guys, I gotta go. But you can have all the booze you want, whoever captures them. So, of course, when the door opens, it's not Lamont Cranston. It's the Shadow. And when they see the Shadow, these poor drunk bums, they're just like, no thanks. And they just kind of look down at the floor and walk away. And that's the last page of Howard Chaykin inks. Yeah, Howard Chaykin was pretty young then. It's now we see another side thing of Bliss. He owns this like graveyard and like mortuary, and he's trying to sell plots to this Margot Lane and Harry Vincent go, pretending to be a young couple looking for a plot, and he's trying to sell them one. They don't find out any information though. It's a bust. So they go back though, because Harry sees something suspicious. He sees a windsock. Why would you need a windsock in a cemetery? The dead don't need to know which way the wind's going, but an airplane might. So they come back, and it turns out Bliss has got this whole thing going. That's why that operating room was there, where he plans deaths for people, criminals. If criminals just want to check out and disappear, he'll find someone who looks their same body type, put him in some like car accident where their face is disfigured, and then he'll give the person plastic surgery, the criminal, and they can go off and live a new life. And nobody will be looking for him because everyone will think they're dead. So that's the little scheme he's been pulling. So Devil shows up again and tries to strong arm Margot and Harry. And it looks like he's gonna succeed. This is a one page also, it says, inked by Bernie Wrightson, but you'd never know it. This actually looks pretty bad, this page, compared to every other page. It looks like it was inked by some like fanzine artist. So he's going to use Margot and Harry for the next job he has. He's like, you're the same build as this couple who want to, this criminal couple who want to escape. So they douse the car with gasoline, and they're going to send it off this cliff. Of course, the Shadow shows up in the nick of time. And he rescues them. And the Shadow makes them pay for their crimes. Kills Devlin, or the devil. And then when Homer Bliss tries to fly away, he jumps on the plane and makes the plane go all erratically. And Homer Bliss, falls to his death right into an open grave, coincidentally. I apologize, I'm still sick, and I just have nothing to do. I'm stuck at home, so I'm going to keep making these videos. I hope it's not too obnoxious hearing my congested voice and my coughing, but I got to do something. So here's number 6. I skipped number 5. I think it was like Frank Robbins drew it or someone I definitely didn't want in the Hercules Pentax Academy. So, but I do want the last issue by Michael Kaluta. It looks like we got rid of the color holds. Maybe it was too expensive and the shadow wasn't selling well enough. And this one's called Night of the Ninja. Apparently this was owned by Lee Roy at one point. Well, sorry, Leroy, it's mine now. So we see Chinatown. I love this drawing here. I was looking at this and it's like, seriously reminded me of like Sam Keith. Just the weird chunkiness of this building and the shading. And this one's called Night of the Ninja. And we're back to our core 2 creators, Denny O'Neil and Michael Kaluta. Oh, and Jerry Serp, too. He does great colors in these. I think they didn't know who the letterer was. Could be Ben Oda on this one, it said. So once again, let me see, did I miss something here? Oh yeah, the shadow attacks this guy. I'm sure he deserves it. And Shrevey says, hey boss, wait a minute. And he says, I thought I told you to wait. Why are you disobeying me? And he says, hey, I think you're going to walk into a trap. This den of thieves you're walking into, the police are going to raid it tonight. And I know you don't want to be like caught in the middle. So on the second floor of this den of iniquity, this ninja is killing these guys. This is pretty early for ninjas. I never really heard of ninjas as a little kid. I know there was ninjas in that Manhunter by Simonson. And then years later, you know, Frank Miller started using them. So the shadow's chasing this ninja. On the way out, the ninja kills this old man, and his daughter is crying. And when he goes up to the roof to confront the ninja, the cops are like, we got the joint surrounded. You know, as far as they're concerned, the shadow's a criminal, just as bad as any mobster. He works outside the law. So the shadow does some amazing feat, jumps off the roof and like lands on this windowsill, and he totally escapes the cops. Turns into Lamont Cranston, finds himself talking to G. Oil Proud, and he's this guy running for district attorney. He's kind of a glory hound, some kind of pompous rich guy, and he promises that he's not only going to clean up the mobs, but he's going to get the shadow if he gets elected. So we see his operatives hanging out. Shadow gives them all orders. Fun layouts here. I like this. So Lamont Cranston pays another visit to that that district attorney wannabe guy. And a Chinese throwing star comes at his neck, and Lamont pretends to stumble into him, but it saves his life. And Lamont says, hey, I got this friend Harry. Let him, be your bodyguard. So Margot goes to see the young woman whose father was killed by the ninja. And as soon as she comes in, the woman conks her on the head with some nunchucks and knocks her out. Her siblings are like, why are you doing this? She didn't mean us any harm. She's basically like dealing with drugs so she can get her relatives back from China. You need a lot of money for that. I like this. It's nice New York architecture here. So Harry's looking after this district attorney guy, and he gives him some tea or coffee, and it's poisoned. And then I like this how it's kind of drawn and colored as if he's like tripping out, and the ninja comes out of nowhere and easily takes him out because he's drugged. So he calls in to Burbank. It's like, send me an ambulance. Tell the Shadow what happened. So this daughter of, I should find her name, but what is her name? I don't know. She's going to kill Margot. But then the Shadow shows up and rescues her. But then she gets killed. She's standing near the window. And the ninja threw one of his ninja spikes through the window at her. Man, I wish Kaluta did more than 5 issues of this. These are so nice. So the Shadow realizes it's that the ninja is actually the district attorney wannabe, whose name I forgot, because he was in the Orient for a while. So the Shadow figured, oh, he must have studied under a ninja. And the Shadow tricks him into attacking him near a window, and it's just his empty cloak, and the ninja plummets to his death. The Shadow never fails. Ha 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 ha. And that's it for the Mike Kaluta run. Well, Denny O'Neil and Mike Kaluta run of The Shadow. And I hope you enjoyed it. I love these comics. I bought the graphic novel that collects them all, and actually sold it when I got all the original issues, because they just can't duplicate the colors. Like these rich blues that I was pointing out, it just doesn't look as good on the slick paper. I know this is like, you know, sometimes the lines aren't as perfect, but this just looks so much better to me. And so if you can get the originals, good for you. If you can't, there's many collections of this stuff. Even like in the 80s, they were collecting this stuff in nice hardcovers. So I hope you can find either version. They're just a good time, fun read, and just beautiful art. It's fun just to stare at the pages. I've been doing it for, I think, 40 years now. Been looking at these comics pages off and on. So, yeah, there you go, The Shadow. And I hope you can join me next time here at the Hercules Penix Academy of Comic Book Studies.